Presentation, Capitol Street, West End, Transition Over Centuries. First of all, I want to give acknowledgement to God. I know this is a educational program, but I'd like to give acknowledgement to be able to share my skills, my gifts, and knowledge with everybody else because all of us have something to give, and we want to help heal 2020 and keep hope for a better next decade and next century to come, if so possible. We want to make the best of it. A beaver can build a dam. Vultures are nature's garbage collectors. Mockingbirds clean your radiators, and robins are natural extroverts, as well as plants provide nutrients for our physical health. Yet, you don't have a purpose? Yeah, right. Check out 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 14. For more inspiration on understanding that we all have something to offer. Because it is the social studies teacher who must be the advocate and the promoter of awareness and action in the classroom and outside of it regarding the very problems that plague society. For society is people and social studies is about us. And again, going back to so much that has occurred just in this year of 2020, it is not for us to take a resigned position. We need to be proactive and do what we can to create a better world if a better world is to come. And if not, then we need to do all that we can collectively, but more importantly individually, to get on the right track for whatever it happens in our spiritual transition. Okay, just want to give acknowledge about that because I think that's important early on to do that. All right. In the early part of the 20th century, Jackson was beginning to take root as a city with new outlying sections that extended westward and southward of the central business district. During the early 1900s, Mississippi's capital had grown to more than 7,000, according to the document, the Historic Preservation Commission, page 5. Again, Capitol Street, West End, transition over centuries. Clinton Road extended from Jackson's first capital. Into Jackson's country-like west side as a major thoroughfare. An easy commute to Jackson, Clinton Road underwent two major developments that contributed to an increase in traffic flow. Cedar Lawn Cemetery, which is bounded south of the Kansas City, Illinois Central Railroad tracks, and North Clinton Road. And Livingston Park, which today is known as the Jackson Zoological Park, which is adjacent to Cedar Lawn Cemetery and bounded east of Parkside Place. In 1904, Clinton Road became known as Capitol Street, becoming lined with churches, wood frame 1 to 2 story houses, and commercial properties. And this note comes from the Historic Preservation Commission, again on page 5. In addition, residential development was complete large frame houses placed on lots lining both sides of the street. Also, Historical Preservation Commission, page 5. During the same time, Jackson College became the center for Black West Jackson residents for social support and political action. Formerly known as Natchez Seminary, Jackson College, today known as Jackson State University, was first located in Founders Hall on the campus of Millsaps College, which is north of downtown. The school moved to its present location, as you see here in the picture on Lynch Street. And we want to note that Jackson State resides in the historically black community of Gowdy, or at least next to Gowdy, also known as Washington Addition. So the Capitol Street region, I'll get into that in a little bit more about how it was set up during, because this is the South, And we know that the South for a long time had a period called Jim Crow, which set up racial segregation of groups. And because Jackson State University is a historically black college and now a university, it was set up in a black area of Jackson, which is not actually the Capitol Street area, but is south of it. We're going to talk about that in a minute. By the way, Lynch Street is 3 main streets blocked south of Capitol Street, as stated earlier. And Capitol Street, or Clinton Road, known today as Clinton Boulevard, were originally communities that were racially resided by whites, nearly up until the national mandate to racially integrate public schools and therefore de facto racial integration of neighborhoods throughout the city of Jackson. The West Capitol Street area can be said to have been composed of an integral neighborhood type. Okay, that's integral neighborhood type, excuse me, meaning that these communities comprise residents who were cordially and frequently responsible to one another's needs, whether social or emotional. As a result of Jim Crow segregated era, which was nearly from the 1890s to the late 1950s, this atmosphere may have been stronger among the black communities of Jackson. The collective quote-unquote church of Jackson's African American communities provided among like members of the community. Rapport was perhaps more potent among black Jacksonians, again because of the mandate of Jim Crow segregation and its oppression or oppressive outcomes regarding school and employment practices, to name a few. On a positive note, black Jacksonians of every occupation lived side by side in their communities. Again, because of racial segregation in neighborhoods. For example, a black doctor more than likely would have been restricted from living in a white community that would be more aligned with his economic status. Therefore, because of his race and few options for housing choices and even fewer options to reside in black communities among his like counterparts that would share his similar economic status, the doctor would have been resigned to living in a black community that was demonstrated its community members to be of various economic backgrounds, which would explain why there had been a rapid growth of black middle-class Jacksonians to integrate into more affluent, historically white communities. More on that note in a minute. Okay. On the other hand, because whites were less restricted to where they could live and were not restricted to ghettos altogether, they would more than likely have lived homogeneously among community members of similar economic statuses. Here's a table of schools that served the Capitol Street, Clinton Boulevard community today, and which schools were historically white and historically black prior to the integration of schools in the mid-1950s. Which brings me to this point. Throughout the middle and late 20th century, the communities encompassing West Capitol Street began to undergo a change in racial makeup as a result of public school integration due to the Supreme Court ruling Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas in 1954. Many white residents that once lived on streets like Claiborne Avenue, Claremont Street, and Capitol Court were now beginning to move to other neighborhoods to live in outside of their former West Jackson communities. Some of these parents decided to withdraw their children from their former school to attend one that may have been a private academy or parochial school. Still, there were other white residents who decided to remain in their communities and were open to the idea of a racially diverse West Jackson annex schools, venues, and other institutions. Nevertheless, as many white Jacksonians left their former communities for others, black Jacksonians who were restricted and insulated in ghettos because of Jim Crow laws were moving into the West Capitol and Clinton Boulevard communities and its overlays for the same reasons that whites moved to other communities: better schools, better housing, and better jobs, according to the ideals of what each group determined to be better. Today, it is unfortunate that a number of West Jackson communities are plagued with various social problems and challenges in infrastructure. From its day and the days of black communities being integral prior to integration, West Jackson is now composed of neighborhoods of the anomic type. Neighbors are less harmonious and distinct in personal values like child rearing and caretaking of the home and yard maintenance. There is little sense of community. Neighbors just happen to live among each other in the same neighborhood without acknowledgement of each other. Therefore, West Jackson neighborhoods and other communities throughout Greater Jackson are less active in political movements like voter participation and community protection groups. There are not a body of community centers that have a central focus on the betterment of a single community, a collection of communities, or a ward as a whole. Furthermore, because neighbors are more exclusive, there is no common bond to diminish or alleviate the problems that exist in the community. Therefore, Jackson or West Jackson residents are somewhat aloof and peripheral to the goals of the larger community, resulting in the lack to contribute collectively to the prosperity of the city. One of the issues that we don't have is that we don't have a lot of high congestion because we're not a really large city. For me personally, it just never takes long to get to anywhere, whether you're going from, especially if you're going from downtown to Clinton. Jackson is more of a what I call a long city. I don't know what you would call it in geographic terms, but it takes longer to get to from North Jackson to South Jackson because of the long distance, so to speak. But because it has a smaller area between east and west, which the flow of East Capitol Street to West Capitol Street to Clinton Boulevard, it really doesn't take. It only takes about like maybe even for average speed limit, it only takes about maybe 5-10 minutes to get from one side to the other. So I think that's a good thing, because when you're in a city, the larger cities of the U.S. and some of the South, that it takes a while to get from one part of the town or city to the other, where we don't have that type of problem here, and I think that's a good benefit. Most citizens are friendly to speak, ask for help, and lend a hand at most venues and in public. I think that's a characteristic of the South in general, because people are a little bit more laid back and relaxed socially, but also in their work ways or habits. It permits or it contributes and promotes people to be a little bit more friendlier to each other and helping each other, and also attributed to the smaller place. So geography has its benefits in classes to understand about how people, or how us as humans, work and operate and live. And I think that's, again, a trait that's not only attributed to Jackson, but just the South in general. And I'm proud of being a Southerner for that reason. Our current administration has worked hard to get rugged roads repaved. Right now, the Lumumba administration, again, I think, has done a great job. And just seeing the number of streets that have been, that are very rugged and hard to pass through, are becoming smoother to travel on. Is when we think about infrastructure and, potholes and things like that, I realize that it's not all about just, it's not all about just, the streets being needed to be repaved because they're out of date. A lot of it has to really go to what we're doing. If most Jacksonians travel about by car, by vehicle, over time, if things are not taken care of, no more differently than if you have a scratch or get a cut on your arm or your hand and you don't take care of it, it's going to get worse over time if you don't medicate it. So in the same way, you need to take care of the streets. So it's really not all about the age of the street. We have to consider that Jackson has a lot of natural growth, especially in West Jackson, where many of the houses have been abandoned or dilapidated, have been untended to. There's another thing, have been untended to, and because of that, nature takes over. That just goes to show the power of nature over what man creates. And so that undergrowth under the infrastructure or streets is also partly what's causing some of the streets to become rugged or to tear up over time. So it's not always about how old the streets are. And then we, like I said, we got to understand that we contribute as commuters, people going back and forth. We contribute to, you know, the streets wearing out over time, because anything man-made is going to bound to tear up and need to be fixed. We're almost equidistant between other major cities. Uh, we can go from, you can leave from here and go to Shreveport. It's about 3 hours. You can go the opposite way east and go to Birmingham, at least northeast, and it's about 3 hours. You can go straight north to Memphis, and it's about 3 hours. You can go straight south to New Orleans, and it's about 3 hours. And you can also go to Little Rock. It's about 4. And I think Mobile maybe about maybe an hour and a half. And then on top of that, it doesn't take Atlanta to the east 6 hours, Dallas to the west 6 hours. You know, so again, Jackson being the crossroads of the South. I mean, it's, you know, we got it going on in that way, and it doesn't take that long to get to those places, even by car. And for others that are commuting through Jackson to those places, you know, those cities that I named, it doesn't take long. You just cut through here. So, you know, that's another benefit. And then lastly, many rural areas and attractions to see. Not only in the, we don't have a lot of, we don't have any, excuse me, as far as I know, we don't have a lot of, you know, attractions like Six Flags or amusement parks or skating rinks, but there's a lot of natural beauty in the South, again, in general, but here, particularly here in Mississippi, there are things to see and do. You know, when you have little, actually less is more, I would say, because you get you get the nature, you get the beauty of the 4 seasons. We actually have 4 distinct seasons when a lot of places don't have that. Uh, we have a winter, we have a fall, we have a spring, we have a summer to experience the changes in the weather and the changes in nature. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think Mississippi is a place that you can experience that and get out among. You know, we have the 3 main national forests here. And we have the petrified forest up in Florida, not too far from here, about 30 minutes out. So there are things to see and do, and we can create even more. I think that's why Mississippi is such a state that grows artists, and I mean artists in a collective sense, musicians, writers, uh, just all sorts of people, and that comes, from my understanding, that comes from your inner source, and to have that is gold. And so Mississippi, because we may not have a lot of the things that a lot of other places have to do that are external, it allows you to draw in and find yourself and find your place in it. So to me, that's a beautiful thing. We actually are in a beautiful state, in a beautiful region, and I'm proud to say that. I have no shame about it at all. Um, Small cities are easier to manage, so there is no reason, again, why Jackson cannot become a better city. That many other statesmen, and I mean, you know, Georgia, Texas, all those other states throughout our country wouldn't mind crossing to. We are the crossroads of the South. It is up to the residents to construct and create the environment in which they want to live. Oprah Winfrey and Esther Hicks were once having a conversation about this, and the following quote about communities resonated with me through their conversation. And the quote reads, "We see it even as we move around this nation that there are neighborhoods that you can just feel how those people feel and their lives reflected. And then we see there are neighborhoods that you can just feel how those people feel and their lives reflected." And what they were doing was making comparisons about vibration, and they were talking about this conversation about the law of attractions. It was a video that I was watching on YouTube. And they were talking about, collective energy. And I believe that because energy is not just individual, it can be collective. And when you look at that from a geographical standpoint, it does make sense as to why some neighborhoods are suffering, not economically so much, because there can be neighborhoods in which the residents or the citizens have very little economically, but just because you have very little finances to take care of some things doesn't mean that you can't be clean and take care of your yard. I totally disagree with that. So I understand what they're saying. When you look at one particular community and it's well kept, the yards are mowed, and there's no, their streets are clean, and just things that are tended to. Now you have some communities where people are too obsessed about, if you have a neighborhood association where somebody says that you got this tree too tall, or the house has to be painted a certain color, I think that's a bit extreme. But on the other hand, you have other communities that are totally neglected. And I think if houses and nature could talk, they would be depressed, because they're part of the environment that makes the neighborhood or community. So, having said that, it is not the local government's responsibility to take care of the wellness and aesthetics of a particular neighborhood. The residents can and must do that. However, education needs to change to the point that Jacksonians can feel empowered enough to change their lives. Education really makes a difference. If schools are really doing the job where you can go, students can go in, gain knowledge where they can, and not just have to gain it to go into working into adulthood, but also to be able to use it be able to apply something, some knowledge of some course that they can use in their present lifetime and for the future as well. So that has to change. Our education system in America has to become better overall. Because not only because we're not number one, I don't even think we're in the top 10, unfortunately, but because we need to be able to, I believe that people should be able to sustain themselves with the gifts that they have. I mean, we have gifts when we come here. God, the external forces, the higher powers, whatever you may call it, gives that to us. I believe that. And so there's no other way, no other better way to be able to make one's living other than to be able to use what you already have. And so if we're doing that, have that as a premise or a philosophy for our schools, and we are teaching entrepreneurship added with it, we can all be better off in a way. And I think so many entrepreneurs are saying that 2020 is a good year to do that. And I think we need to take heed to that advice. Those that also are served in the education sector have to realize that what education, entrepreneurship, and their God-given talents can offer them. I just mentioned that. People's education and values govern their actions of how they treat where they live and how it is projected by social scientists, news media, and etc. Race and no other categorizing factor should determine whether a person becomes successful or not. Let me say that again. Race and no other categorizing factor should determine whether one becomes successful or not. because that's external. And again, it really just starts with who you are and what you really want. It is a belief in the energy of God, one's dreams and motivations that must pave through for success to reap. And once we know that, all can change for the better for us individually as well as collectively. On a lighter note, one of the best things that has happened for Jackson since the Lumumba administration is that many roads are now getting paved and outdated infrastructure seems to be getting a facelift. Okay, talked about that earlier. It's also great because I feel shame for my city when I see visitors coming through on a Greyhound bus or a Delta liner or a Klein Tourist liner. I have to crawl through potholed streets to get to downtown. So again, there's no reason that Jackson shouldn't be a better city, especially for its size. Ever notice how Japan's physical geography is small and is broken up due to, partly plate tectonics, earthquakes, and things like that, yet it is a mighty nation economically. And Jackson is still the capital. But anyway, now let's look at some things that, close out lightly with a little historical knowledge about your city of souls. Street namesakes that lead to the town or community that they're named for. I always was very fascinated as a kid, and I think that goes back to your gifts again. I think what I do now in trying to impart knowledge that deals with us, and when I mean us, I mean people. I don't mean a certain group of people. I mean all people. To be able to share that. And growing up, I would always just pay attention to street names, and I didn't understand why that was. I mean, I've always been a big nerd. No shame at all. No shame at all. Because again, that has brought me to where I am today, and I'm very enthused about the knowledge that I want to impart. So I began to understand later that a lot of the streets are named for the places of the community that they're named for, like Terry Road. It actually goes to the town of Terry. I realized that back in my college days, we just happened to take that, just on going on these excursions to just discover things and find out about places. And lo and behold, I didn't know that as a kid. But if you don't believe what I'm saying, test it for yourself. Go all the way out, go to Terry Road that starts at the beginning from downtown, and take it out and just see where it goes. Georgetown Avenue, was it named for the Georgetown community? Because we do have a community called Georgetown, and I realized it not too long ago. Again, going on these different excursions, checking things out, that there's a Georgetown. There's a very very short street, not a lot of housing on it at all. But I just know the Georgetown Avenue. Well, maybe that's why it's named Georgetown. And then Raymond Road goes to Raymond. So, I mean, to me, that's, even though that may seem something small, I think that's really big. To me, that's where the geniuses are. Tupac said we didn't need any more entertainers or, just people that are, I guess, celebrity based. I would agree with him on that to a certain extent, because again, going back to one's gifts, you can't, unless you're not using your gifts, which they may fade away over time because you're not practicing that skill, they're always with you. And if a person can shoot a ball through a goal, or sing very well, or they can play an instrument or whatever, that's part of their talent. That's part of their skill. So I don't want to knock that. But however, it's so many individuals, so many people in occupations that don't get that opportunity. And when we look back to think about how clever, but yet how simple or humble it was for people that set up a city to name roads, for people to get from place to place. They would name a road Terry Road and name it Raymond Road, so that people would know how to get from one place to another before interstate highways and before state highways came about. And now us today take that for granted. We don't really think about it. But I thought about it, and I was like, well, why are these roads named where they're named? And it's fascinating to me. Like I said, I'm a big nerd. I don't care because it's a lot just to learn that's right in front of you. You don't really have to be in the school to get an education. Okay. Historic roads that lead to the town or the community that they're named for. Okay, Old Canton Road, Old Brandon Road, Old Fannin Road. Okay, is it an old road to Canton? Was it an old road to Brandon? Was it an old road to Fannin? Now, I think Fannin Road actually goes to Fannin, but I'm not sure if Old Brandon Road goes all the way out to Brandon, and I definitely don't think Old Canton Road. But again, these are the creators, the innovators, the pioneers that set this up for us. Maybe just like political lines can be drawn to shrink a city or enlarge a city. So maybe over time, Canton or Brandon was in a different place than it was today, and the actual road went to that place. Okay. Street namesakes that connect two towns: Jackson Raymond Road, Clinton Raymond Road, Florence Byron Road, and Oakley Palestine Road, just to name a few. Raymond actually connects with Jackson and with Clinton. So again, the beauty of the people that are coming up with uh, this idea, to get from place to place, it just goes to show, we have a beautiful people that have set that up, and again, those people should get credit. Even a person that just helps them pave a road, a civil engineer and construction worker, they need that credit. That's a talent. Florence and Byron connect across physical, which is the Pearl River, and political borders. Of course, Florence is in Rankin County and Byron is in Hinds County. And then Oakley Palestine Road connects the Oakland and Palestine communities of southwest Hinds County. Then we have street namesakes of other towns in Mississippi. And I noticed this, very early on, again, being a little nerd, how the streets in a part of West Jackson near, I guess you could say, west central end of Lynch, all are named after towns. And it makes me wonder, could these streets be named for Jackson's first residents that came from those towns, or it just happened to be that the city planner or whoever helped to create the neighborhood decided to use those names of Mississippi towns? And then there's some downtown, Pascagoula, you got Pearl Street, you got the Tombigbee after the river. Maybe that's a connection to there. So yeah, it's interesting. And many more. Why don't you explore? Okay, get out and see those things. Like I said, when Mississippians, we may not have, some Mississippians would say, especially a lot of young people would say, that there's not enough to do, where you can create fun. You can create simple fun by just doing things like that. I just thought that was fun for me growing up, and it still is. It's fun. Exploring geography. That, like I said, has brought me to where I am today. Thank you for your time, as always, for allowing me to share this with you and for you to check more things out. There is more to come. So again, as I said before, in the meantime, tour a Mississippi highway or a byway. Vicksburg is a great, beautiful city. Small for its size, but it's beautiful, especially. You just notice how the geography can change leaving here in Jackson and getting to Warren County, how you start to see the bluffs around, I think, out a little bit right in Bovina. Bovina's right east of Vicksburg, and you start to see the geography change. And once you really get into Vicksburg, you start to see a lot of places that are hilly. I mean, it's scary. It's fun though. It's fun to me. And a lot of places that are very low, but it's a beautiful city. I think it's a very well kept city. It should be a model for Jackson. Jackson can be a better city. It really can be a better city. We need to take advantage of our river to be able to use for, not just for the reservoir on the northern end, well, it's really not in Jackson at all, but the northern end of Hinds County, but also we need to take advantage of the river on our lower end for our, residents here in the city to be able to vacate and be able to go out and take your lawn chair and, explore nature and ride ATVs and things like that. So yeah, tour Mississippi Highway. I also check out Highway 61 along the western border of Mississippi from north to south, from Natchez to Tunica. That also changes. The geography of that part of Mississippi changes, especially when you get into the Delta, and it is a beautiful place as well. I always like to regard the Delta as Mississippi's industrial park because so much of it encompasses farmland. I mean, soybean and cornfields, and it's just beautiful to see. I mean, we have a beautiful state. The South in general is a beautiful place to visit. And even if it's not a lot to just vacate in terms of a venue to go to, it's a lot of natural beauty. And when we can appreciate the beauty of our state, the natural beauty, it just helps us to keep the state clean. I believe Pat Fordyce, former First Lady of Mississippi, wife of Kirk Fordyce, always promoted, "I'm not your mama, you need to clean up." So, keep our state beautiful, keep it clean. We're going to be changing the flag soon, even though to me, it's not that big of an issue because I think the hearts of people have to change more so than things. But even though that change is coming, it'll also be great to add to that, to bring people here that want to see the state, but also for our residents here in Mississippi as a whole. Whatever your race, whatever your economic background, whatever your value systems are, take advantage of what's around you so that not only it will be a great appreciation for Mississippi, but it'll also be a great appreciation for the South, and it'll also be a great appreciation for your country. I mean, we people get status quo is to visit so many other places and don't even really get familiar with what's around you. But there's a lot of, I at least try to appreciate what's around me first, and then it makes me more appreciative of going to other states and regions and possibly countries. So again, thank you for your time, and I will see you on the next video. Like, share, and please comment on what we can do to improve our state for the future. I think in a lot of ways, first should be last and last should be first. And not wishing for any state to be last, but Mississippi can come up. We deserve that chance to at least, if not rid ourselves of our history, we can practice that. I heard Stevie Wonder say on a video I was watching earlier that repentance can show how we're living our lives. That's the best way to show it. And so in order to contribute a better image, even though we don't have to please people, but in order to contribute to a better image for Mississippian, we got to do better as Mississippians. And so first should be last and last should be first. We definitely can come up. We have, long as we have the time, we have the chance. And I thank you for your time. Have a good day.